Hey, welcome to History and Coffee. It's hot. I wanted to talk about a really super controversial subject, and it's something that comes up every once in a while, and that's the subject of white and specifically um, Irish slavery. And unfortunately, this has become one of those issues that people cling to. Um, you know, Essentially, people. There's two sides of this basically, which is unfortunate because there's not very, sides in history is kind of a little bit of a logical fallacy, but people use it one to downplay the. I don't know really the logic or how to explain it, but it's sort of like when people bring up the issue of the African American slaves. There's always somebody that will come in and be like, "Oh, well, the Irish were slaves too, so it's not that bad," or something, or yeah, I don't. Anyway, and then the other side of it is when people encounter those comments, they say, "Oh, well, that never happened. There was never any Irish slaves. That's actually just a myth." And I figured I'd just go into it. And if you want to get mad at me in the comments, and I actually a couple of years back I brought this up in somebody I was like Facebook friends with or something like that posted something about how it was like, oh, people like to bring up this Irish slave thing and it actually never happened. There's no evidence for it. And I was like, well, that's not actually true, but there's some nuance and blah, blah, blah. And the guy actually ended up unfriending me. So he called me a racist and, the whole nine. So we'll see how this goes. Well, so the whole Irish slave thing, yes, it did happen, and yes, there is some case for people saying it didn't, and that's the sort of the nuance part. So Ireland and Britain have had a very troubled history coexisting. Um, Britain has not been so nice to the Irish throughout the years, and this is another occasion of that. Now, where the slavery thing comes from is there's a lot of uprisings and revolutions and people refusing to pay taxes and things like that, whether they're fair or not, in Ireland. And in the 18th century, the British government decided to, as a punishment for these people, because it's not like they could really put them in prisons or, it was such a wide scale uprising thing, and if they put them in prisons in their own country, they would just kind of escape, and so there was a lot of it. This is why the Australian prison colony was founded and things like that. But they decided that in order to deal with this Irish problem they were having, they would arrest people and basically sentence them to hard labor. They would then be sold. Basically, people would come in who owned sugarcane plantations and things like that in the Caribbean. British. Generally, those were given to British nobility. That was kind of that's a whole other story. British rule in the Caribbean was basically where they stuck their people that were kind of incompetent. Like if you were some sort of military person and you screwed up, they would, but not bad enough that they could like disgrace you. They would kind of send you to the Caribbean, be like, here, manage this island. But anyway, there was these large sugarcane plantations there, and these guys would come in and basically bid with the government for these prisoners' sentences, essentially. And so they would, oh well, basically these men have been sentenced to hard labor, so I bid this many pounds to take this many people, and they carry out their sentence on my plantation. And so that's the argument that's used, saying it's not, well, oh, they were criminals and they were sentenced to this. But the nuance here is that a lot of times these people who were sentenced to this weren't criminals, and a lot of times they were essentially worked to death on these cane plantations. So the demand for this got very high, and there wasn't enough criminals to keep up with actually supplying the demand. So the British government would just go around and round up random Irish citizens left and right and say, you're a revolutionary and you're sentenced to hard labor, and then sell them to these cane plantations who would then work them to death. So the answer to the whole Irish slavery thing is yes, it absolutely happened. Um, yes, it was slavery, despite it not being that on paper. The British government is very good at doing bad things and making them look like they're not bad things on paper. So, but as far as it being used as a counterpoint um, to people bringing up African American slavery, that's ridiculous because this didn't happen for anywhere near as long as the African American slavery did in both the British in the UK and in America, and it wasn't as prolific. And that's really just not. You can't. It's just not. It's not. It's a logical fallacy to be like, oh well, if somebody stubs their toe, and then you walk up to them and go, well, I stubbed my toe like 5 years ago, so there's no reason for you to complain about it. That's really the way I see that argument. So it just is dishonest as people saying, oh well, that didn't happen because it doesn't fit with their particular views. So hopefully this answers that question and settles that argument. So yeah, yes, it did happen. Yes, it was slavery, and no, that's not an excuse for you to argue with people over slavery in general. So thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something.